series, right? It happens even to the best closers of all time. But that's what Kawhi has been, like an all-time great clutch player. Now, are Kawhi and Paul George's talent and skills pitched quite as high, and physical gifts pitched quite as high as LeBron and AD? No, not quite. But they should be good enough, given the right supporting cast, to get it done. And they seem to have the right supporting cast now with the Clippers. They bring in Rondo. They go, by the way, we were talking about Terrence Mann. That kid can play.
He can play. I like Terrence Mann. I like him a lot.
They still have Patrick Beverly and Reggie Jackson and Marcus Morris and Zubac and, Ibaka and Batum. They have a supporting cast. And Kawhi is going to play the way he's going to play in the playoffs, which is, a 30-point-plus guy and a great player, an MVP-level player. It comes down to what Paul George does. If Paul George can elevate or even just stay Paul George in the playoffs, they have a chance to win the whole thing. The problem with Paul George, as it is the problem with James Harden, although Harden is falling from higher heights than Paul George, is he has been unable consistently just to stay Paul George when it matters most. Therefore, the Clippers, who are ready to win a chip, it looks like to me on paper, the Lakers are hurting, the Nets are hurting, and even if they weren't, the Clippers are right there, are depending on the guy Kawhi made them give all that stuff up for to come through when it matters most. That's Paul George.
I think you're wrong on this. I truly, truly do. But before I get into that, let me say that the Denver Nuggets are real. Michael Porter is special. And right now, we have universally walked around acknowledging Jerry West as one of the greatest, if not the greatest executive in the history of sports, in the history of basketball. I would remind everybody that Jerry West was a consultant and a right-hand man to Ballmer and Lawrence Frank, Doc Rivers, and those boys in L.A. They had the 12th and the 13th pick. It was either 12th or the 13th or the 13th or 14th, I remember. It was one of the, but they had back-to-back picks in the first round. And they passed up on Michael Porter Jr.
Because of his back?
That's right. Hey, I understand. That's a reasonable reason to back off from somebody. But damn it, it was a mistake. Oof. As we look at Michael Porter, ladies and gentlemen, let me put y'all on notice. This man is a young, rising star in basketball. And if he can stay healthy, the Denver Nuggets will win a championship within the next 2 to 3 years.
Could be this year.
It could be this year, but they will win a championship because Jamal Murray is that dude and the Joker is the Joker.
You watched the game last night.
Yes, I did.
Did you see the two-man game that Jokic and Aaron Gordon had going?
Listen.
When Aaron Gordon cut to the basket?
I understand that, and that's a big deal, particularly when you got bigs like Drummond and Anthony Davis with LeBron in the West to deal with. Aaron Gordon is definitely a plus. It's not an accident they're undefeated with since he arrived at 4-0. But let me tell you why I'm going with Kawhi Leonard as the guy with the pressure. I get what you're talking about in terms of Paul George's game. But when and I love Paul George and I believe in him and I believe he's going to get it done. But if for some reason he doesn't, we ain't going to let Kawhi Leonard off the hook. Because when you ask the Clippers to mortgage the farm and give up multiple first, second round picks and all the stuff that they gave up to get Paul George because Kawhi Leonard demanded that they do so. When you do all of that, you don't get to run and hide and point the finger at somebody else because they didn't get it done when that was your guy. Okay? It's almost like management. If management swears to upper management, this is the guy, and then that guy flames out, well, then that's on you. Who insisted to management, you got to get him. Now we got to take it a step further because it gets even more important here. You know what Kawhi Leonard was saying in the offseason when they lost to the Denver Nuggets after being up 3-1? Max, we need a point guard. We need a point guard. We got to get a point guard. We don't have a point guard. Patrick Beverly can play, but he's basically a defensive player. But we need a point guard. We need a quintessential floor general, somebody that can run the show, somebody that can run the offense. So every shot we get ain't a difficult contested shot.
He's right.
Blah, 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 blah. He was right. Now you got Rondo.
Who hasn't played for them yet, by the way.
Who hasn't played for them yet. Now you got Rondo. Playoff Rondo. That's what you got him for.
No doubt.
So, okay, you needed Paul George? You got him. You need a point guard? You got him. This is your franchise. You want to be the dude? with the crown dangling from the mirror of your convertible, arriving in LA as a champion and an NBA Finals MVP, saying this is your town now. You didn't say it, but your New Balance commercial said it for you. Where you at? The point is, again, you average at 25.9. Kawhi Leonard's a superstar. I know that. There's no debating here. Just like I wasn't debating that about Russell Westbrook yet the other day. Nobody's debating the greatness of the individual talent that Kawhi Leonard is. That is done. Period. The question is, what you come to LA for? What you come to the Clippers for? We asked because now's the time. And just like last year, you won 3-1 with LeBron waiting for you. You didn't make it there. You got to remember, Kawhi Leonard has the license to opt out and be a free agent this summer. He don't have to stay with the Clippers. What you there for? You here to deliver something they never have. The Clippers have never even been to a conference final. Ever. Could you imagine if Kawhi Leonard doesn't even get them to a conference finals? Oh, no. I'm not looking at Paul George. I'm looking at him.
Fair point. I'll say this. If he chokes in a game 7 again, I think you'd be right. I don't anticipate that because he's never done it before.
I don't either.
He's always been, again, look at Kawhi's playoff record. He's one of the greatest players who ever lived in the playoffs. Yeah. He's better than normally in the regular season. That's a great player.
No, I disagree with you there. I'm not saying numbers-wise. What I'm saying is you weren't asked to do anything in the regular season when you were with the Spurs compared to what they asked you to do in the playoffs.
Okay, but then in Toronto.
I'm just saying that, but they asked for more. In Toronto, yeah, but you would consider, but you remember, he took about 22 games off. It was the load management thing. He wasn't asked to do that.
He was there for the playoffs.
He was there for the playoffs.
In the playoffs, he's been one of the greatest players ever in the playoffs. Okay. But he did choke in Game 7.
Remember those conditions.
So if he does that again, I'm with you. All right, that's on you, Kawhi. The pressure would be. But I'm saying this. He's not the GM LeBron is. LeBron looked at Miami and said, I'm going to take Wade and Bosh, put himself in a winning situation. Kyrie and Kevin Love, putting himself in a winning situation. All right, I'm only going to be able to have one dude with me in LA. Who's that going to be? AD. Winning situation. AD's an MVP caliber player. Kawhi's only got to make a choice one time. That was to go to the Clippers and say, hey, bring me Paul George. Paul George then has to be a second banana who can play at almost an MVP level. He hasn't done it in the playoffs. Now, the reason he's with the Clippers and not the Lakers, Stephen A., is because LeBron tried to get him in L.A. Hey, come join me and AD. That's non-competitive. The league is not competitive for that.
And I respect you for that.
Kawhi's like, no, I'm going to compete against you.
I respect
the best available dude was Paul George.
But that's you. Why don't you get the hell over it, Max? Why don't you stop hiding behind all of this stuff? Max, why don't you give him a Christmas card? Buy him a Christmas present. Invite him over to dinner. You want to celebrate
Paul George got to step up.
What I'm saying to you is that, that's what he did.
Yeah.
I respect that. He did it. But in the end, it's about what you're going to do. You came to L.A. for a reason. You had them sacrifice the farm for a reason. You wanted Paul George. You wanted your point guard. They've given you everything you wanted. And we know he was asking for some other stuff, the private jets and everything else. We probably know he got that too.
Get it,
I'm not mad at him.
Get
it all. But in the end, you got to show up. And if Kawhi Leonard, listen, if the Los Angeles Clippers don't make it to the conference final.
Let me ask you something.
The number one person you must look at is Kawhi Leonard.
Let me ask you something. If they don't make it to the conference finals,
right?
And who do you predict it will be who has underperformed? Kawhi, Rondo, or Paul George?
I would tell you it would be Paul George based on history. Right. Based on history. Because Rondo shows up in the playoffs, and Kawhi has too, except Game 7 last year. But what I'm saying to you is, again, similar to what I was talking about with Westbrook, I know what you can do. I know your numbers. That's a given. The point is, you got to finish the job. And if you're Kawhi Leonard and Ballmer did all of this because you're trying to build a new arena where the former LA
Kawhi said, get me Paul George or I'm not coming.
Where the LA Forum used to be, you're trying to build a new arena there. You're trying to establish yourself in LA. This is what you're trying to do. It's a big deal. That's why he did all of this.
So let me get
and
this
you
straight.
got to at least get us to the conference final.
By that logic, though, like if LeBron, who chose Kyrie, right? Like he comes back to Cleveland because he sees Kyrie, goes, I can win with this cat, right? And then brings in Kevin Love also. If Kyrie didn't play big in Game 7 against the Warriors and they lose, that's on LeBron? No, that's like LeBron identified a killer in Kyrie. If anything you want to criticize Kawhi about is that he thought Paul George had something in him, which might be there, by the way. I'm rooting for Paul George just like you are.
George does
it
have
might be there, and he might do it, but he hasn't done it yet.
The problem with Paul George is that you're constantly asking him to be that dude that scores regardless of being contested, whatever. Nothing is coming easy for Paul George because nobody is facilitating anything easy for Paul George. That's why Rondo's going to be so important.
That's why the pressure's on him, because he has that now.
But I'm not saying that Paul George doesn't have to produce. I'm saying in the end, if the Clippers come up short, how dare anybody look at Paul George before they look at Kawhi Leonard? You didn't show up in Game 7 either.
So if Kawhi drops 30 a night, hits clutch shot after clutch shot, and they come up short against a monster like Denver or Utah, and Paul George doesn't put
looking at it differently than me. You know what I'm looking at it, Max? If you're good enough to get to a Game 7, close. I'm not looking at Paul George to close. I'm looking at Kawhi to close. Now, if you get bum rushed in 5 or something like that, well, then that's different. But if you're good enough to get to a Game 7, what did I say when Allen Iverson went up against Kobe and Shaq? I went like this. Oh, AI gonna get you one. He gonna get you one.
When Jordan,
you get to a Game 7, you Kawhi Leonard, you should be able to close.
When Michael Jordan went to a Game 7 against the Pistons, defending champions, Scottie Pippen had a migraine, scored 2 points in 40 minutes, right? Was that on Jordan for not closing?
No, but that was before Jordan became a champion.
But
Kawhi's a two-time champion.
you want to point to that game and say that's on Jordan because they got to a Game 7?
No, but we talk about the bad boy Pistons. They beat you. They made new rules because of what they did to Jordan. Yeah. Are you kidding me? You can't compare.
The point is, you're not looking at MJ, you're looking at Pippen.
Listen, Jordan got beat up. In the case of Kawhi Leonard, Jamal Murray dropped 40. 40.
I'm not arguing against that.
40.
I'm not arguing against Kawhi choking in this game. He just never choked before.
Could you have stopped Jamal Murray from dropping 40?
Nobody stopped Jamal Murray.
Oh, really?
No.
I thought Kawhi could.
No, nobody could stop Jamal Murray.
I thought Kawhi could.
Nobody could stop Jamal Murray. Stop.
Yeah, I understand.
He just had a series against Donovan Mitchell. 50 points, no turnovers one game.
Listen,
50 with no turnovers.
Leonard, what is Kawhi Leonard known for? Why was he an MVP against Miami?
Defense.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
But ain't no defensive player stopping that Jamal Murray.
Okay. Well, then you ain't that dude.
Kawhi's not that dude?
Then you ain't that dude.
Because he can't stop Jamal Murray?
Get to a conference finals.
I'm with it. His main support's got to show up.
Conference finals.
Agreed. PG-13 got to show up.
He'll show up.